G'day everyone, it's Charles Mackenzie on this Sunday morning, and today I'd like to talk to you about my friend Jay Franklin. I'd also like to talk to you about my life, what my life's been like over the last 30 years. And today, the reason why I want to tell you about one aspect of my life is because our group is being slandered today on our Instagram page, okay? And I'm going to address this. For fighting for contaminated blood, I've campaigned for Australia's deadliest medical scandal for 30 years. I've been involved in litigation, I've been involved politically, I've done literally anything that was sort of available to do, okay? Probably the only thing I haven't done is had a haircut recently, okay? Which I would have if I was allowed to get my hair cut. I think hairdressers in New South Wales are starting to allow that to happen now that lockdown seems to have ended for now, has it? Okay, so what's happened is that I've known that there are major forces that don't want to get to the bottom of Australia's deadliest medical scandal. What is Australia's deadliest medical scandal? It's contaminated blood transfusions and blood products that were distributed before the 2000s, okay? Now, there was an HIV contamination in the 1980s, all right, but that did stop. I think there were a couple of cases beyond 1985. That was when the advent of testing happened. Sorry, I shouldn't say a couple, possibly a handful. I don't want to be insensitive. But by and large, HIV no longer became a threat to the blood supply with the advent of specific screening for HIV in the mid-1980s. But there was this other virus, this other deadly virus. And this other virus, it didn't get a lot of love for lots of reasons, right? Didn't get a lot of attention. But this other virus, before 1990, this other virus, it was called non-A, non-B hepatitis. That was because they hadn't specifically found a test for it. But they knew they had a test for hepatitis A, and they knew they had a test for hepatitis B. So they knew that there was this other type of hepatitis, so they couldn't specifically, identify yet, but they knew that it was more deadly than the other two. That's what they did know. And this hepatitis C, as it became known from 1989, when it was identified, it ran rampant in blood supplies pretty much since the inception of blood supplies in the 20th century in places like Australia, okay? So for decades, you could say from 1950, from 1960, 1970s, 1980s, okay, what percentage it is of blood transfusions would have been contaminated? I reckon it would have been up to 7%. Now, the Australian Red Cross will tell you it was 1%, and they'll pick out a tiny little study with about 5 people involved to try and lower what it was, because they know that they've infected tens of thousands of people. And if you look at their own documentation, as I have for 30 years, you'll know that they knew about this. They knew that the blood supply was contaminated. Yeah, they did. They knew that the blood supply was contaminated by Hep C, or non-A, non-B Hep C, non-A, non-B hepatitis, literally for decades. Okay, but they didn't want to tell patients. And the reason they didn't want to tell patients is because, well, they'll tell you it's because they thought it was very mild disease. But now we know from a legal inquiry that happened in the UK, and the British had such an influence on us down here with our health system and with our blood supply, we know that that was a lie, that they knew that actually that this virus was lethal. And they knew in 1974 that it was contaminating people through the blood supply. And they knew that, children were getting things like fibrosis on their livers. Young children, okay, with scarring on their livers. That tells you that there's something wrong with these blood products, right? So there is a company involved. The Australian Red Cross are the ones that collected the blood. So the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood, they're responsible for the management of Australia's blood supply, right? And they were responsible for the testing or lack of testing. Okay, and they basically collected the blood and distributed blood transfusions. And then you've got blood products. And what would happen is that the Australian Red Cross would collect the blood, test the blood, and when it was made into blood products for, say, people with haemophilia, these blood treatments, it would be made by an arm of government called the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, okay? And they were privatised in 1994, and they became CSL. They're now the world's largest blood products manufacturer. They're also a jab maker, and they're a $140 billion Goliath. Now, they don't like me very much, and for many years there's been a number of people suggest that my life is at risk, okay? And particularly, there was a worrying death of a doctor who was wanted for evidence, a chap called Dr. Ian Young, I think 20 years ago. And that was a very nervous period because there were people thinking that he might have been killed, okay, before he could get to the stand, because the information, the evidence he might have given would have blown this thing up. All the truth would have come out, right? And the people involved would have had to pay compensation and so on. So what's happened now, it has all come out now. It's come out via this infected blood inquiry in the UK that blood supplies in the UK and Australia, they were compromised right up until the 2000s. And there's tens of thousands of people infected, okay? So because there's compensation involved and billions of dollars involved, you've got insurance companies involved, you've got government agents involved, you've got all sorts of people involved. You've even got lobbyists involved. You've got other charities involved who see us as competing for their budgets and so on. You know, we've had enormous discrimination from the hepatitis charities and groups in Australia. Oh, yeah, truly. Yeah, they've slandered me beyond belief, and the group, for years. And you think, why would anyone who cares about viruses like Hep C, particularly if these things are generally run by bureaucrats or former bureaucrats and they don't have the virus, why? Because of budgets. They know that if the public gets to see the truth about how contaminated blood in many cases was delivered knowingly to patients, we can prove that. We do it right now if you want. Yeah, go to infectedbloodaustralia.com and have a look at the evidence they didn't want you to see. Have a look. Just have a look at that website, okay? Have a look at the evidence section there. Have a look. It's unbelievable, okay? They did this knowingly. And then they legally indemnified one of the companies, this Goliath, CSL, 140 billion Goliath. We can show that they knowingly infected children. They knew what they were doing. We've got the documents. They actually murdered a kid. We can prove it. Many children. But no. So the opposition that's thrown at me is because of this, because these vested interests don't want this coming out. I've got no interest in getting in huge fights with them. I don't want to be murdered. I'm stupid. Okay? If that's what the risk is, if that's a legitimate risk, I don't want that. Of course I don't. I'm a peaceful, loving person, for goodness sake. I just want to live a quiet life. I'm drinking a cup of dandelion tea. This has been my life for 30 years. You know, they tried to jail me. I've been told to be murdered. That's not very nice. Crikey, I've got no family. I mean, what does Australia want from me? I've been, the bloody after-sales service for this company, CSL, for decades, picking up the phone to all these haemophiliacs and relatives that are asking what went wrong. How come 1,400 Australians were killed by hepatitis C contaminated blood products, CSL and Australian Red Cross? You got me answering the phone. You've got me being threatened by people. Hey, I'm coming for you. Yeah, this is all going to come out in court. This is unreasonable. You have wrecked our lives. So today on Instagram, I'm going to take this right. I'm going to handle this. Something has upset me, and it's actually not common that happens, but this one has, and I'm going to address it right now. So recently we posted my mate Jay. There he is. What a great man he is. And there's Bertha, and she is equally as marvellous. I actually love them both. Bertha is on our committee at Infected Blood Australia. And Jay and I had lots of conversations, but we had some last conversations on Skype. And my final Skype call with him, I've kept it on screen. That was in 2017, and I'm never going to wipe it away or clear it or any of that. I miss him. So Jay, and also another volunteer with our group who's been very helpful, Michelle Stanvik, we all had a final conversation. Michelle was a friend of Jay's as well, independent of me. And we had a final conversation. Jay had been an advocate for, the right to choose to die, end of life, euthanasia. He was very big on that. He did a wonderful job for that campaign and those people. He was a great man. He also ran for politics. What a cheeky legend. What an absolute cheeky legend. I love him. Absolutely cheeky legend. Okay? So he wanted us to share that he was also a contaminated blood victim. He also got Hep C, okay, as a kid. And that had a huge effect. Although being a cheeky fellow and a funny fellow, later on in life, he got over it. But in the early phases when he found out, it affected all of us, okay? And it does, when you're a young man, I suppose it can affect you the way you see yourself, okay? Yeah. Yeah, the way, young man starting life, on the dating scene or whatever it may be. Yeah, it's a challenge. It was a challenge back then. And of course, Hep C now, if someone's infected with Hep C now, these new treatments are pretty good. These new antiviral treatments are getting rid of it rapidly. I don't know what the long-term side effects might be, but people in our group have used them and they've cleared the virus. But it wasn't like that in the 90s and the 2000s. The treatments back then were like, for some of our group, they'll tell you they were the equivalent of chemo. I didn't have them. I've still got the virus and it's devastating, okay? It is. It's devastating. This hepatitis C virus, back then, if you've had it, like many of us of our group, they've got cancer, cirrhosis, the whole bit. So if you get infected today, just now, very likely, if it's treated quickly, promptly, it could mean that you completely clear it, no issues. But if you've had it for years, like people in our group, even if it's cleared, you're left with the devastating effects, okay? It's devastating, okay? Devastating. So, Jay knew all of this, and he actually posted stuff on Tainter Blood, and he'd get no likes at all. But when he posted about end of life or euthanasia, he'd get lots of likes because no one knew about Tainter Blood. The ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, have never once properly investigated it. Okay? Their medical reporter, Sophie Scott, recently wrote to a concerned citizen who was concerned about the fact that the ABC had never once investigated. And she said, this is the ABC's chief medical reporter. She said, this story has been covered widely in the Australian media already. Okay? No, it hasn't. When did Four Corners cover the fact that tens of thousands of Australians were infected with the deadly virus hepatitis C from blood transfusions? When did 730 report do that? How many people were infected, Sophie Scott, right? No one knows. It's because it's a cover-up. So I get attacked every time I put this thing forward because no one else has done. It's been me for 30 years, okay? So basically I get attacked. And sometimes I even get attacked by infected blood victims because I'm being attacked. They think I've made a mistake. I've got a couple of idiots overseas thinking I'm an anti-vaxxer because I'm upset by the fact that CSL, who made the blood products for haemophiliacs, killing 1,400, were given legal indemnities. And then they're given legal indemnities to make these jabs again when they haven't even answered their duty of candor obligations. And I'm called an anti-vaxxer for saying that's wrong. No, I'm not. I'm pro-medicine and I will not be slandered. I really won't be. I'm going to take legal action, okay? Yes, so this person commented today on Jay Franklin. And what do we have here? Let me see if I can get it. Here we are. Kelly Ann McRae. There she is. Kelly Ann McRae. What a strong individual you are, Kelly Ann McRae, coming onto our Instagram page, the terrible things you've got to say. You need to get the facts straight. Did Jay pass away due to Hep C complications? Yes, partly. Jay was having a huge problems with his virus, a virus inside of him that he couldn't beat. We wanted IV, vitamin C, we wanted medicinal cannabis. He was denied all of it. It was a bad death. Don't you dare slander us again, or this group, or demean our friend Jay's death again. Kelly Ann McRae, I mean it. My name's Charles Mackenzie. If you discriminate against us today, again, Hep C, there was an English study in the 90s, they knew that Hep C, left unchecked, it kills more people than HIV. And here you are basically questioning us when we say that Jay was a Hep C contaminated blood victim and it had such a profound effect on his life, on the choices he could make or the things he was denied. And then in the end, he had this infection around his Hickman's catheter. I've had one too. You want to see that? Sally Ann McRae? And that infection, yeah? How do you think the Hep C or the fibrosis that his Hep C caused his liver? Okay, that would have been a factor. How do you think that went for Jay in his final moments? Kelly Ann McRae. Hickman's catheters, we've all had it, huh? We've been through hell, and you come to our page to slander us. Now, I'm very sorry that you've had a son, apparently, who's been ill, and if you've looked after that boy for that, you're my hero. But for what you've said here today, you're most definitely not. Please leave us alone, and anyone else that wants to attack me, please understand, we have lawyers now. I don't want to get in lots of fights, and it's in most cases water off a duck's back. But when you demean friends of mine that have died, or you discriminate against their memory or our group, yeah, we'll be taking action, because that's just the common sense, decent thing to do. Thank you.